Welcome to Restore the Glory podcast. My name is Jake Kim.
And I'm Bob Schutz.
We're two Catholic therapists sharing what we've learned personally and professionally to help you on the journey of restoration. If you've been blessed by our podcast, please prayerfully consider partnering with us on Patreon. Your support will help cover the cost to produce the podcast, but will also give you access to exclusive content like monthly reflections and special live stream teachings. Go to patreon.com/restore the glory and join the mission of experiencing the restoration of our God-given glory. Well, hey, Bob, good to see you. I'm glad we're together again. We are in our third part on our series here on divorce. And Bob, we have possibly the most special guest we have ever had on this show. And I think you should probably introduce this person. I think that's probably fitting.
Yes. What we talked about is we wanted to have somebody who could talk about the experience of a spouse going through divorce.
Yes.
After discussing it a little bit, we came up with this guest who is my mother. My mom has a beautiful story of healing. She's been dedicated to a healing process for many years. She also, in the middle of the breakdown of the family, went back to school and got her degree in psychology and then became a therapist and a teacher. She still teaches to this day.
Wow.
I won't give her age. She can give it, but you can imagine if you know my age. But she's very vibrant and healthy, and again, loves to teach and was a therapist for many years, helping other people. And so she's the mother of 7 children, and she is just an inspiration to a lot of people who know her. So, Mom, welcome.
Thank you.
That is awesome. I have the privilege. I wish our listeners could see your smiling face. So this is just wonderful that you get to be with us. And Peggy, thanks for your courage to be able to come on and just talk about your story and your life. We're really grateful. And let me just say, I have so many questions because I've been with your son, Bob, for a lot of years. So there's lots of questions that now I can have answered because I have his mom and a captive audience here.
Jake, one of the things that you weren't at a conference, we were down in Miami where my mom lives. We did the conference and Bart and I were down there and we introduced her and we were telling our story, and we had the Carmelite sisters there. My mom and the Carmelite sisters became best friends within a couple of hours, and she was the celebrity of that event. I mean, at all the breaks, they sometimes come up and talk to us. They came up and talked to my mom the whole time.
I believe it. That is wonderful. So Peggy, you now live in Miami. Is that right?
Yes.
Wonderful. And you're still a teacher. What do you teach? What do you do every day? Like, what's that?
Psychology and sociology, both.
Really?
I love being in the classroom. I am here with my friend Andrew. We teach together. We do centering prayer together and go out to lunch together and have fun.
That's great.
We had to teach online during the pandemic, and that was tough because we had 3 different ways of having to do it. And I said I would only go back if I could go back in the classroom.
Yeah.
And that has been a joy.
That's wonderful. So when you're teaching psychology, do you teach a specific class or you'll teach anything?
We teach about 26 different classes.
Oh, my word.
We have people from at least 27 countries down here. So the challenge and the learning and the sharing is magnificent.
My goodness, Bob, I never knew that your mom was also a therapist and a teacher. A lot of things are beginning to make sense. I see where you got your gifts was from your mom.
Yeah, she'll let you know that too.
Hey, Bob was a little kid as a teenager that used to wake me up and say, Mom, what does this word mean? Explain it to me.
Wow.
So he's been a curious little guy from the time he was little.
Yeah, I believe it. Peggy, we have been in a series so far where we've talked about divorce. And now I know that's probably a hard topic, or maybe it's not for you. I'm not sure. But I just want to thank you for being willing to come on and talk about your experience of having had a divorce and from the perspective of a spouse. So far in the series, we've talked about divorce from a child's perspective, and now we're going to talk to you and about divorce from a spouse's perspective. And I guess, Bob, you're also able to talk about it from a child's perspective too, if we wanted to. So, Peggy, maybe we could start with, no one plans to get divorced. And so I'm assuming in the early parts of your marriage, things were great. Like you guys were doing great and loved each other. Can you start us there? Tell us about that.
Well, Dave and I met in ninth grade in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Wow.
And we dated throughout all of high school. And he was the handsomest, smartest, most athletic, genius,
wow,
loving soul that I ever met.
Wow.
We got married, had 7 beautiful, wonderful children, had a super life for many years. He had an appointment to Annapolis, but he had the choice of getting married to me or going to the Naval Academy. And I said, Dave, I'll raise our David alone if you want to go in the Naval Academy. He said, nope, I want to marry you and raise my children. And so we got off. We were married at St. Bernard's Church in Mount Lebanon in Pittsburgh by Father McCarran, John McCarran. And his instruction and his love was beautiful. It was beautiful. But David had a very strong mother. He was an only child. And his mother insisted he go home and go to work, that he couldn't come be with me the night we were married and the week after.
Oh boy.
So that was kind of an unusual start for a marriage.
That's fair.
But we lived on campus at Colgate for 2 years and loved it, had many fraternity parties and fun together, came back to Pittsburgh, and he ultimately worked for IBM, where he did very well. He was made the 100% club.
Wow.
And he'd be laughing at me because he was great with technology. I did take the IBM wife's course, but with new technology, I'm lost.
That is
anyway, we went to Hawaii with IBM, and we had dinner with Elvis Presley and his wife on the same little patio.
Really?
When the baby was born. And so many happy memories.
Sure.
We were president couple of CFM and Family Life in Pittsburgh.
Christian Family Movement.
We were in charge of about 56 parishes.
My goodness.
I will tell you, we had lots of very wonderful, beautiful people that we met with, including Bishop Wright every Saturday morning.
Wow.
And we were part of the CFM group every week and so forth. We went speaking together as a couple, and I'll never, ever forget the first time we had a big audience. We were invited to Notre Dame. And Father Umbriorski was from Chicago. He headed up this conference. And in those days, you didn't have a wonderful stage. You had a wooden box with a back behind us that'd bring up the props.
Okay.
The curtain opened, and there were well over 1,000 people in that audience. And I fell backwards. I fell backwards off the thing about 2 feet down.
Right.
And I think I was a bit nervous.
Yeah.
But anyway, we did what we needed to do. We talked about marriage and family, and will you still love each other when you get old, and all of this. So life was very eventful. We played duplicate bridge together. We would do museums with the kids and go sled riding and go camping once a month, and had a nice life. It was fun.
Yeah.
And of course, extended family that we always included. But then, I don't know, I mean, we don't have days to talk about all of this, so
Sure.
I don't know what you want me to dwell on or not.
It's great to hear the introduction. Yeah.
Well, I think God was very part of all of our lives. We had a little round table that would sit around and pray. And we always had an Advent wreath that we would light during Christmas. And I never would allow the telephone to ring or them to talk on it during dinner. That was a time for us to share. It was a very special, special time. My children will tell you the oldest children had a very different life than the younger ones after the divorce. but I'll go back a little bit.
All right.
I think the devil had his hand in destroying things.
Huh.
And I cannot tell you how proud I am of these children that Dave and I had to persevere with what they had to go through. Sometimes hardly any food, sometimes we didn't have electricity on. We bonded together. We helped each other to get through a very, very rough period, financially and every other way. And what they have done with their lives and their closeness to the Lord, I always said, it's God the Father. You may not have your own father here, but it is God the Father. And the way they have persevered and what they are doing with their lives to help others makes my heart sing with joy.
I'm sure.
So we had a fire.
When I was 6. So this is like 7 years before the breakdown of the marriage.
Okay.
So this was really one of the root issues that was undealt with. So go ahead, Mom.
I think what started Dave's problem was trauma. We had a fire. We lost our home. We lost 2 people, lives in his family, the only 2 that were left. He was an only child. We had brought his father to live with us when his mother had passed away. And then when his grandmother fell and broke her hip, we brought her to live with us. And I was at my sister's graduations. One graduated from Trinity and one from Marymount. And we got a call at 5 a.m. Our house burnt down. They were both dead.
Oh, man.
And he was a tower of strength then. And he was a tower of strength for about 6 months. And then his hair started turning white. And he started losing hair. His behavior got bizarre. He started drinking. His parents had a drinking problem. He started womanizing. He took all the money we had out of the bank and started doing crazy things. It was unlike him ever. It was unlike the person I knew who loved me and was so supportive and loving to the kids. And he just totally turned. He just became the meanest. I can't even begin to tell you. It was like the devil acting all the time. It was just hard. Wake you up in the middle of the night and curse. And it was just not him.
Yeah.
It was just weird. But anyway, that was the beginning of the end. So after many years, we were in Pittsburgh, and you did not get a divorce easily. It dragged out over probably 3 to 4 years. And that's just the way the law was then. And this is Christmas time. And my brother in October said, Peggy, you're there alone. You're raising the kids alone. I have a house. If you want to sell the house there and move to Florida, we'll support you. So I did, 1969, the end of 69. And as my friends say, it was like standing on top of a high diving board with 7 kids on your back and jumping.
Oh, my goodness.
You never knew what you were getting into. But we did it. We're here. We're okay. Thank God. My son David did die, which is the saddest part of my life, of any parent's life, to lose a child. It's just not natural order. But the love and the support of these kids to this day is so magnificent. I can feel nothing but gratitude and peace and joy because of them in my life. So even though the divorce happened and it was not pretty, we're here. We thank God.
Yeah.
Can I fill in a little of the gaps there as we draw out the story?
Yes, Bob, please do, because some of it's painful to me.
Yeah. Okay. But I'll just share some things and then you can follow up. So a lot of that was hidden from us children until the last couple years. And then my dad would not be coming home at night and could see the strain on my mom's face. And when my sister Margaret was born, this woman called my dad, and my mom was getting ready to go to the hospital. And that's when my mom realized he was having an affair. And so they tried to make it work for a couple years, and he was present for Margaret's birth. And then, his drinking got pretty heavy, and he lost his job and moved to another town, to Philadelphia. And we didn't know it, but he started another family before getting divorced. He got his second wife pregnant, and then my brother Dave, at the age of 16, is the one that found them.
Oh my goodness.
So, anything you want to comment on that period, Mom?
Yes, I'll never forget it because it was my friend that I grew up with that got him a job with another computer company in Philadelphia. And he was excited about having another job because IBM had let him go because he wasn't showing up for work, and they did pay for psychiatric care, and they did call me in, which is a whole other story. I could tell that's how I started school. But it was Christmas, and we had our first Christmas in Miami, and we got oranges and wrapped them in red net and green net and did the best we could do and expected Daddy home because he had brought home plans the time before. He wanted to build a house and bring us all there and all of this. And he never showed up. He never came. And the tears and the Christmas that we all felt, that many people feel now when they've lost a loved one or a partner or they're alone for the first time on holidays. It's a challenge. But that's right after that my brother and my son went and found him with another woman and a child. And David had to tell my mother and tell me, and it was pretty significant.
Yeah.
But let me fast forward a little bit. We did all go to Dave's funeral. Wife 1, wife 2, wife 3, all 13 or 12 kids.
Wow.
And after the funeral, which happened to be on my daughter Margaret's birthday, in a church named St. Margaret Mary, which is my name and her name, wife 3 invited us for lunch, and wife 2 had us all for dinner.
My goodness.
So the kiss of peace was powerful.
It was a beautiful moment of reconciliation and healing that had been going on for a number of years. It was just kind of the climax of that.
My goodness. Peggy, I can't imagine, honestly. You know, it's one thing to hear this from Bob's perspective. And even Bart's. I've heard both Bob and Bart share their perspective on the whole story, and I've heard exactly what you've said, where the older kids having a different experience than the younger kids, and so all that's familiar to me. The parts that I haven't heard have been your experience, and so I'm hearing you say, you know, very clearly and in a very honoring way, that Dave was a good man. You fell in love. You guys had a great life. And then it sounds like the fire was a very strong turning point for him. And then things started deteriorating, and yet you're trying to make it work, and things just kept getting worse and worse and worse. Then alcohol enters in and infidelity comes in. And yet you're talking now about going to his funeral and sharing a meal with his second and third wife. Like, Bob, we have talked about forgiveness on this show, and it's not common that you witness forgiveness, I think, to this degree. So, Peggy, maybe could you talk for a bit about the hurt you experienced, and then maybe could you finish by talking with us about your process of forgiveness?
Well, the hurt, the pain was deep, no question. Bart, little sensitive Bart, would talk about coming in my room at night after we all prayed and everybody went to sleep, and I'd be sitting in a chair just crying. I mean, it was painful.
Yeah.
Very painful, no question about it. You had somebody who loved you and to death to us part, who was the meanest, cruelest person. I mean, one day he even threw an iron at my nose and broke my nose. I mean, he just did bizarre things. And this wasn't the man that had loved me, that we had a partnership and a life together with. But what do? I mean, I thought I married for life. I didn't want divorce, but what choice do you have? He married somebody else when he was married to me. I had no choice in any of this. Susan and I are now close friends. Nobody understands that, but we are. That's wife 2. and we've both gone through some of the same things together. And I love her children too. I just saw Richie, and I pray for his daughter Missy, who just had surgery. And I'm in contact with Paul from the third wife. So we have quite an extended family here.
Wow.
Bob will have to tell you about Thanksgiving. There were 50 of us there at his daughter Carrie's house. And after praying, holding hands and praying together before we eat, we go around and number ourselves. I'm number 1, you're number 2, he's number 3.
Oh, wow.
Number 47 said, I'm number 47, and here's number 48 in my stomach.
Oh, my.
So we all cheered. The family's growing, growing, growing. I think I have 14 grandchildren and 16 great-grandchildren. I feel like Methuselah, but they are so warm and loving and in touch, and we're all loving each other. And I said to my friend Andrew here that one morning I had a meditation, and I do pray for an hour for everybody in the morning. I saw a big bouquet of flowers, and this big bouquet was each person in my life, my family of origin, my children, my grandchildren, and it was beautiful. And she said to me, isn't there one of them you don't like? I said, no. And I just thank God for this beautiful bouquet of people in my life. It has gotten me through, and my faith and my love of God and the Blessed Mother. My parents were both brought up Catholic. My dad was he was a home builder, developer. He was kind of a tough guy, but he always believed in the Blessed Mother. Whenever you have a problem, pray to the Blessed Mother, no matter what it is. So hopefully that has carried on in my life and in the life of my children. And I just see the word hope. I think it's a golden thread between here on earth and up in heaven. And I think if you have faith, if you have love for other people and love yourself and try to be the best person you can be, body, mind, and spirit. I always taught those 3 things to the kids, even at Christmas. They get one gift for their body, one for their mind, and one for their spirit.
Wow.
And for this Christmas season, I just pray that people would have peace and joy. That's what the Lord wants for us. Try to get over these hurdles in life. They're there. The problems are there.
Yeah.
They're there in the world. My prayer includes in the morning that every child should have food and every child should know love. I pray that every morning of my life.
Yeah. Can I go back a little bit during that tough period, Mom?
Yep.
I know you want to rush to the good, which
rush through that period.
yeah. So if I can say, when we moved down to South Florida, there was no income. My mom was going to school. She did have a small income from working at a day camp. So she was going to school, working at a day camp, but we went on food stamps. But there were often, as she said, many miracles where you could see God's hand taking care of us. She would always say, God will provide for us. God is a father. And so I grew up with seeing my mother's faith in that way, which was a beautiful example. But there are other things during that time, in that period where my mom was in a lot of deep pain, where there was bitterness. It would come out in the way that she would talk about my dad. And again, understandable, but the forgiveness didn't happen immediately. There was a period of time where there was a lot of deep pain, and the attitude towards my dad was understandably pretty negative. Do you remember that, Mom?
Never intentionally, Bob, and I ask forgiveness for that, because he was a man that I deeply and dearly loved and respected and honored. And I always felt sorry for him, not for myself or you kids. I felt sorry for what he was going through with all of it.
Yeah, you got there from my remembrance, but it wasn't immediate. And again, understandable.
He would come to visit and take you kids in the car and drive down the road 90 or 100 miles an hour with me sitting there in total panic. I mean, there were times that, yes, I guess I did feel a little angry. And I think it was pretty normal.
Yeah. I'm not questioning that you had a right to be angry in all of that. I just didn't want everybody to hear that you moved from the moment of the divorce
into joy.
into joy and peace and hope and forgiveness. It was a process.
Yeah,
There was a lot of struggle, but God was still there through all of that.
absolutely. No question. No question. Can I tell Bob's story about moving to Florida? Bob was always a very smart, loving, great kid. I will tell you that. Never gave me any trouble. I had great kids, but that's a prejudiced mother, right?
You're supposed to be, yeah.
So he came down. He loved football and he had played and he wanted to go to this school. And it was January. And so I researched the best school there could be for football and grades and being a Catholic school. And I went to the priest, the pastor, and I said, I'd like to get my kid here in school. He said, it's impossible. The school is filled. This is the middle of the year. And certainly he can't be on the football team. And I looked at him and I said, dear Father, you would be privileged to have this kid in your school. And finally, Bob got in and did extremely well.
I believe it.
That's just a little mini story, but that's how much I believed in these kids.
Yeah, I can hear it.
With everything else that was going on, my mom was very active, involved in our lives during that time, every one of us. And at every game and every activity, she was a champion in that sense. And to this day, just very active in each of our lives. If I could move to a place where I started to see a shifting in my dad and then a shifting in forgiveness, it was we would go on retreats together, my dad and my brothers. After my dad's conversion, he went to AA. And I talk about Christ Renews His Parish. Well, my mom went to Christ Renews His Parish down in South Florida. My dad went in West Virginia. My dad then went to AA. And so he started his process of recovery. And I share at different times about a priest coming into the bar where he was as he was going through a second divorce and brought him back into the church. And
Wow.
It was just really a miraculous time. My mom and my brother Bart and I were praying together and prayed for him and Dave was released from jail, and my dad was released from his addiction and from the running that he'd been doing and came back to the church. So that was a beautiful turning. But I remember, Mom, you remember this moment when Wayne's son Jameson was baptized?
When Wayne was baptized?
No, Wayne's son Jameson was baptized and we were over at his house.
Yes.
Okay. Do you want to tell the story? You want me to?
You do it, please.
Okay. So we're around in a circle. This is 3 generations of family here. And we just celebrated the baptism. And my dad was across the circle from us. We were in this huge circle in my brother Wayne's living room. And my dad looked up as we were praying, and he looked up and says, "Can I stop for a second?" And he looked over at me and at my mom, and he says, "Can I share something?" And we just both said, yeah. He looked up at my mom and he said, "Peggy, I just want to thank you for the ways you've cared for our children, our grandchildren. And I just want all of you to know that none of this was your fault, Peggy. This was all on me. It was mine, and I hurt you, and I hurt all of you kids terribly. And I just want to ask for your forgiveness and say that I'm deeply sorry. I can't make that up, but we can go forward from here." Remember that, Mom?
I sure do, Bob. And he thanked all of us that he was as well as he was. He said, "It's thanks to all of you that I am here now and functioning."
Wow.
I think we need to tell the story about how he came back the week before he died. It is a powerful story, too.
Please.
Yeah. My brother Rich, from his second marriage, went up and got him. This is 6 months before he died. But he was suffering from short-term memory loss with Alzheimer's. Wasn't terrible, but it was significant. And he had an opportunity to spend time with each of his children, not knowing that he was close to dying at all. But when I said goodbye to him, I tell this story at some of the conferences. When I said goodbye to him, I felt like that was the last time I was going to see him.
Right.
And I felt total peace, just total all the healing that we had done, I just felt just total peace with it. But one of those trips was down to Miami. That was where he started. And my sister Lauren and my brother Wayne and my brother Rich, who's from the second marriage, were all down there. And he went and met with my mom. And so, Mom, you want to tell that experience?
Yeah. I didn't know what to expect because I hadn't seen him in quite a long time. And I knew he was married to other women, and I made 2 phone calls to him in my life after he left. One was to say that his son was dying and he needed to get here, and he got here. David died in your arms, in your dad's arms.
Yeah.
And then the other time was Kathy was in the hospital after this.
Giving a baby up for adoption.
Giving up of the baby. And I said, Dave, she needs you. And he came. And other than that, I just had no contact with him. So Wayne came, he was at Wayne's house. Wayne came and picked me up in the car. And Wayne didn't know what to expect. He thought his father hated me, and he didn't even know if we'd talk to each other. He came up and kissed me hello. He pulled out my chair. He took my purse. He took my arm. We went to a restaurant. He was the most attentive person on earth. And we spent like a weekend off and on together, including with Rich at Lauren's house, where we went through the whole family tree and all the generations and all these stories for a whole Sunday afternoon. Then he went to leave to go back. And he looked at me and he said, I love you, Peggy. And he tried to pull me down to kiss him. And I just backed off because I hadn't kissed this man in 20, 30 years or more. I just automatically backed off.
40, 50 years, probably. Yeah, 50 years, probably.
Maybe. But it made us, I always knew he loved his kids, even though he couldn't function and couldn't pay for them to eat. I knew the love was there. And I just hoped and prayed that they felt that love. And they felt it through God the Father in heaven. Amen.
Yeah. So there's some advantages to short-term memory loss.
That's great. Peggy, you seem to be somebody who is optimistic and find the positive and the bright and the good in life. Is that true? And then second question is, how did you get through all of this pain? Is it optimism? Was it grace? Can you talk a bit about your heart in this journey?
Let me give you an example. You've got my son Bob there working with you. So just let me give you another example.
Please.
Bob was playing football and broke his leg. And I took him to Dr. Unger at 4 p.m. He said, we have to do immediate surgery tonight. Go home, get his things, and meet you at the hospital.
Wow.
So we get to the hospital. And he's there, and I get somebody to stay with the other kids, and I'm there sitting in the hospital room all night. Nobody came out and said a word to me. He had surgery, I guess, about midnight. The dawn was coming, and our family physician walked in. But before he walked in, a nurse came out from the operating room and said, there are 2 patients back there, and one of them just died.
Oh, my goodness.
And I'm sitting there all alone. So when Dr. Borkin came in early in the morning, I said, please go back there and check. I just heard 2 patients are there and 1 died.
Yes.
And he came back out and he said, your son is alive. That's a mother's heart. What can you do with a mother's heart? Every mother has a sense. I mean, it's the closest relationship you can have. A baby growing in your own stomach. I mean, without prayer, without a belief in God, I don't know how somebody could bury their kid or feel any joy.
Yes.
I mean, it's through my centering prayer, my prayer time, that's my strength every morning. If it doesn't happen, if I have to rush out to something, it's just a whole different day.
Wow.
That's where the strength comes from. And for the love of my wonderful children and friends.
Yeah. Can I ask a hard question, Peggy?
Sure.
Do you have any regrets?
I don't regret that I married the man that I married. I have no regrets that I have all the children that are so beautiful. I don't regret my family of origin at all, which is very mixed and a whole other subject.
Hmm.
The only regret I have is financial, because I could never work a full-time job to get any benefits for my old age. I always had to piecemeal jobs and school together.
Right.
So I have no security, no pensions, no.
Yeah.
I mean, thank God for Social Security even.
Yeah.
And thank God for people who love me, so that I haven't had to want for anything. And thank God.
Yeah. Wow.
Which is the greatest security.
I would say that's the only thing I wish I could have done differently.
Gosh, I don't know how you could even imagine doing it with 7 kids, a job, school. I mean, it's just like single mothers to me are heroes. They're champions. There's a single mother in my family, multiple, iterations of that in my family. And so I watched firsthand what that's like. There's divorce in my family, so I understand the stories. And Peggy, let me ask maybe a different kind of question. Why do you think your story is the case? And I know there are stories where the wife maybe is the person who you can point a finger at as to why things went sideways. But most of the stories I know, the ones in my family, your story as well, it was the man who struggled. Peggy, why do you think that is? Why do the men struggle so much and treat their families poorly?
Well, I think there's some women that have done that too. I don't question that.
Fair enough.
But I think men are not taught how to deal with their emotions, especially the older men. We're taught never to cry, be strong, all of this. And I think maybe that's a mistake in our culture, because I think if you can share your feelings, your heart, or your pain with somebody, and you can shed tears over it, that's a healthy thing. That's the way I feel about it. So I feel that's the gap between male and female more than most anything else. You have to be the tough guy. You have to be the strong guy. You don't cry. You don't share what your pain is. And I don't think that's where life is.
Yeah. Bob, what's this like for you, hearing all this?
Just very familiar. We've had lots of conversations like this.
Yeah.
So it's good to honor my mom in this way. In the conferences, we talk a lot about my dad. People say, well, what about your mom? And
yes,
I'm glad to having her own voice here, be able to express what she went through, and just grateful for her faith through the whole thing, and grateful for the ways that she continued to love, didn't give up on loving and caring for all of us. And just her strong faith through it was an example for all of us. I also have a lot of joy for all the healing that took place. And I know my mom's forgiveness of my dad. And again, Mom, do you know when you can trace back to when you were able to forgive?
I don't know there was any one event or any one time, I mean, I could certainly empathize with Susan when she was divorced from her dad. And I thought, here he's putting her through the same thing I've gone through. And that, so I tried to support her through it. But I don't know where the turning point was, Bob. I can't answer that question. Maybe I'll meditate on it and have an answer someday. But right now, I don't have one.
I can't remember a time either, but I can remember seasons of time where I know in my teenage years, there wasn't, you may be working on forgiveness, but the forgiveness wasn't there. But I can think over the last 25, 30 years, I've seen that forgiveness.
Well, I think I would get upset that you didn't have a dad there at your football games or your basketball games or your birthdays. He'd come for some birthdays and not come for others. And I'd feel your pain. I think that was a big part of what I felt very, very often.
Yeah.
To the point of not knowing quite what to do in those times when you all were hurting so badly.
Yeah.
And it was painful. It was painful. Divorce is hard on kids. I've done foster care and I've done family therapy, and kids that have to go one weekend at their mother's, one weekend at their dad's, they're torn apart. It's very sad. It's very, very sad.
Mm-hmm.
So, Bob, process, I guess, is all I could say, and the help of God and the help of all of you. And to see you all now as adults and strong and having worked on your pain and having worked on your emotions and helping other people to do it brings joy to me. And thank you. Love you. Love you.
Well, Peggy, I just want to thank you for being with us here on the podcast. It's beautiful to hear your story and your witness, and it's very clear your faith was the centerpiece. And when things went sideways, you said hope was the golden thread between heaven and earth for you. And there's a symbol of hope, which is, I think, in the Christian tradition, an anchor. And it literally holds you in the same space when the storms come around and life can be crazy. And so what I'm noticing you're saying is that it's very real for you that you were anchored and rooted and grounded in your faith. And you said it. I don't know how people can navigate this stuff without faith. And so it's a beautiful testimony of forgiveness and patience. Like, it sounds like a crazy movie scene where I'm imagining you and wife 2 and wife 3 having a meal together. I'm just like, oh, I don't know, how do those things happen? Like, it's only in God's design where those kinds of things can be put back together and restored. So thank you for your yes, thank you for your witness, and thanks for being with us here today. It's great to be with you.
Well, I thank you. It is my privilege. And I'm so thrilled that you and Bob are working together and touching lives. And I hope that everybody will have a Merry Christmas and feel joy and peace. It's not always easy, but rise above all the problems.
They'll be receiving this after Christmas, but we'll pray that in retrospect.
Yeah, we will. We'll pray that God can work outside of space and time. And Peggy, thanks so much again. And listeners, we hope that this has blessed you and given you hope in navigating all the struggles and trials that are in your life. And until next time, we pray that God would bless you, and we'll talk to you again soon.